Today we're going to be talking about relative pronouns and relative clauses. But in order for them to make sense in Latin, we have to know what they are in English first and why they exist. So make sure you have your chapter 25 notes printed out. We're going to fill those in as we go along, and that'll help you later with your homework. So relative clauses. In English, you'll also hear them referred to as an adjective clause. Now, your book refers to them as a subordinate clause. If you remember them as an adjective clause, that'll also help you to remember why they function. So I like that term better. So relative clauses in Latin, and I will tell you they have the same rules in English. They have 3 rules. It will contain a subject and a verb. It will begin with what we call a relative pronoun. And those relative pronouns are who, whom, whose, that, or which. And it will function as an adjective. That means it answers the adjective questions: which one, what kind, how many, just like an adjective does. And what it does, the whole clause functions as an adjective. It's not just one word. So how it does that is it gives additional information about something without starting another sentence. So it gives information about something without starting another sentence. But the most important thing to know is it cannot stand alone as a sentence. Now, the word relative comes from the Latin verb referre, and that's one that's in your homework and your vocab this week. It means to carry back. So the noun that the relative pronoun gives it additional information about, because remember, adjectives only modify nouns, so there'll be a noun preceding the clause in the sentence. So the noun that it carries back or relates to is called the antecedent. Ante, if you remember from Latin, means before. So antecedo, to proceed. So the antecedent, this is important, always comes before the relative pronoun. So let's look at a couple in English, and we're going to identify the relative pronoun, the antecedent, and then what the whole relative clause is. So what is the relative pronoun? In here, remember, if we look up here, it's going to be who, whom, whose, that, or which. So in here, we've got to whom. Because remember, in Latin, there's words in here that we don't. You can just do whom, and I would be fine with that. But just so you know that sometimes when we do noun cases, remember, where there's an understood a and the, by, with, from, that also carries through here. All right. Who does whom modify? Who is that describing? To whom? Whom? It has to be before, and there's only 2 words. Clearly, one of them's a noun and one of them's not. It refers to the man. So this is going to give me more information about the man. So the man, what's the whole clause? It starts with the relative pronoun. What do you learn about the man? It's the man to whom I gave the money. Actually, let me do that in highlighter here. I think it'll be easy. To whom I gave the money. So we've got, told you it always has a verb, right? And it always has a subject. So what's the subject? I gave the money. In this case, it's an I. So this is the whole clause. If you ignore the part highlighted in red, what's left is a complete sentence. So to whom I gave the money, the clause is never a complete sentence, even though it has a subject and a verb. Remember, sentences have to have a subject and verb as well as make complete sense. So if I just read the rest of it, the man is named Jonathan, it leaves me with a complete sentence, and that's how I know I got the whole relative clause. All right, she has a son who is a doctor. So here again, we have relative pronoun is who, and she, so let's figure out who is referred to. Does who refer to she, or does who refer to the son? Who is the doctor? The son is. And if you're not sure what the relative pronoun, what the antecedent is, then you put who in there. You can either put the son is a doctor, or, and that, yeah, that makes sense. Or you could say she is a doctor. Does that change the meaning of the sentence? Yes. So we know that son is the person that the who is referring to. So the antecedent, remember, is never part of the relative clause. So, but remember, the relative clause has to have a subject and a verb. So the subject is who. What's the verb? Is, right? So who is a doctor? But if you just read she has an independent clause, she has a son, that's a complete sentence. So the whole thing, who is a doctor, is the relative, and it describes, that whole phrase together describes who the son is. The son is a doctor. All right, let's take a look at the next one. The dog whose owner lives next door is over there. Again, who, what is our relative pronoun? You should be able to recognize and start to recognize them. And now dog. So clearly, who does whose refer to? Well, the dog. And you could say, you could actually substitute, it's the only noun, that's the antecedent that's in front of it, so it has to be. But we also substitute dog here. We would say, the dog's owner lives next door, right? If we substitute it in there, that makes a lot more sense. So now we have to figure out which part is the relative clause. So, whose owner, how does it describe the dog? Whose owner lives next door. It cannot be whose owner lives next door is over there, because that just leaves us, it just leaves us with the dog, and that's not a complete sentence. Remember, whatever's left has to be a complete sentence. So if we take whose owner lives next door, the dog is over there. It leaves us with the main clause is a complete sentence. All right. My bicycle, which I've had for more than 10 years, is falling apart. This one is pretty easy because we see the which, but do you see how this clause is set off by commas? That will help us a lot too. So we know the only thing, we're not describing my is a possessive pronoun. It can't be the subject, because you couldn't say my I've had for more than 10 years. You could say the bicycle, I've had the bicycle for more than 10 years. So you can rearrange it. I've had the bicycle for more than 10 years. It tells me that the bicycle is the antecedent. This is what it's describing, the bicycle, which I've had for more than 10 years. You take that out, and my bicycle is falling apart, leaves us with a complete sentence. All right, last one. The people that live on the islands are very friendly. Here's another one. So which one is it? We know it's that. And that modifies who. So who lives on the island? The people do. So the people, it modifies. This whole phrase modifies people. Remember, we still have to leave room for the people. What do we know about the people? The people are very friendly. That gives us a complete sentence. What is the descriptor part? The people that live on the island. That describes, that is a adjectival clause or a relative clause that describes the people. So notice it always, the relative clause always starts with a relative pronoun, which will really help. And the same thing happens in Latin. It's not in a funky order. You always start with the relative pronoun. Okay, so the relative pronoun has a noun job. So in Latin, the relative pronoun can be any of the 5 cases that you know. That's the first thing we need to know. The second thing is it has to match the antecedent in gender and number, not in case, and you'll see why in a little bit. So the case, let me fix that so it looks a little better for you. The case of the relative pronoun, remember, because it's an adjective, so it has to match in gender and number, but in this case, not case, the case of the relative pronoun will depend on its job in the relative clause. I will show you how to find out what its job is in just a second. We're going to do lots of practice. Not on the case of the antecedent. Sometimes they will be the same. Lots of times they won't be the same. The case won't be the same. Okay, so pull out your chart book. On page 50 is the qui, quo. That's our relative pronouns in Latin. So go ahead and take a pause and fill them out. I've also, you can see that in your chart book, I've also given you a chart that will help you to know how to translate the relative pronoun depending on what its job is in the sentence. And remember, ablative can sometimes have no prep and obligate can have a prep, so that will help you there too. And also that who, whom, and whose are the words you used to refer to people. That can be people or things, and which always refers, often refers to things. So it'll help you with the translating. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these sentences. The first one is, Das signum puero qui stat in agro. Now, I've already given it to you in English because I want you to be able to see right away. Give a sign to the boy who is standing in the field. So, relative pronoun, let's identify it first. Relative pronoun is qui. Okay? It is qui. And in the who is it referring to? You can look in the English right away and we see who. Right? So if we said, who is standing in the field? Right? Who is standing in the field? The sign or the boy? Well, it's clear that puero is referring to who. And how to know that is that we can substitute the word boy, and we can see for qui, we see the boy is standing in the field. And if you substitute the antecedent for the relative pronoun, that will not only help you see what the case should be, but it will also tell you if that's the proper antecedent. Okay, so das signum, give a sign to the boy who is standing in the field. So if we're looking at give a sign to the boy, and plus we've got an O with a macron, so we know by looking at that is dative singular. Here, is it dative singular? You can look in your chart and say, no, it's masculine, either nominative or singular, but you can also look and say, if I put it into this phrase, it's very clear that the boy is the subject of the clause. So we can say the boy, so we know that qui is nominative singular. So here, they didn't match. All right, let's take, so the whole, also we got to take a look at the entire clause. It starts with qui, ends in agro, the boy who is standing in the field, because we could put a period right here after boy, and that makes a complete sentence. Give a sign to the boy. And which boy? The one standing in the field. So this is why this whole thing all together, it's not just one word, but all the words together are an adjective that describe the boy. All right, let's take a look here. The boy, so puer a quo ili current ob templum stat. The boy from whom those women are running is standing in front of the temple. So if you look here, we've got a whom, which is one, but you need to go backwards a little bit because that's an ablative word that goes with it. From whom. So who does from whom describe? Guess what? Here it is, a quo. It only can be puer because that's the only antecedent. So it's going to tell us some more about the boy. And we can't do the rest of, we cannot underline the rest of the sentence because the boy does not make a complete sentence. So the boy from whom those women are running right here. So let's change colors. The boy from whom those women are running. So the boy from whom those women are running. Oops, I should not have done the boy here. From whom those women are running. And the rest of the complete sentence is, the boy is standing in front of the temple. Okay, so we've got a subject and a verb. The whole thing cannot be there because we have to have the is. We have to have the whole verb left over so that we can, when we take out the relative clause, it still makes a complete English sentence or a complete sentence. Okay, so puer clearly is, I'm going to stay with blue, puer clearly is nominative singular in this case. What about a quo? A or ob takes the ablative. So here it is the ablative singular, which is why we have to translate it with a by, with, or from. All right? And we see if you look at your chart and it says ablative with a preposition, and it's either whom or which, and which doesn't make a lot of sense when we're talking about people. All right, so, and if you're not sure, what you can do is rearrange the relative clause so that we insert boy into it, and then this will tell us the job. So we would not say, boy, those women are running, right? It replaces that, but we have to make a complete English sentence. So those women are running. The only place it makes sense to put the boy is from the boy right here. And if you can look right here, you can see automatically this is a prepositional phrase. It takes the ablative, and that's why we have to do an a quo, because it's in the ablative. Okay, let's do the next one. All right, nunc puerum non video quem tum vidi. All right, so the relative pronoun is way here at the end. Okay, that always starts the phrase. Now I do not see the boy that I saw then. So, relative clause, whole thing, right? Quem tum vidi. What is the antecedent? Who did I see then? Who is it describing? It's describing the boy. So this whole phrase, the boy, what about the boy? It's the boy that I saw then. Okay, so that would make sense. So quem, we also know, is in the accusative. And if you weren't sure, when you go to the English, we would re-say it. I saw the boy then. And clearly boy here is the accusative, which if we're going from English to Latin, that would help. So accusative, what about puerum? Now I do not see the boy. It also happens to be in the accusative. It is the victim. The boy is the victim of not being seen. Okay, couple more, and then I think that you got this. All right, let's look at the next one. Aliquis puerum audioabit cujus pater mox venet. All right, so let's take a look at the relative pronoun is right here, cujus. And we already know, if you've paid attention to your chart, that it's genitive. But I'll show you how to know that it's genitive singular. And who is it referring to? Who is it referring to? Someone will help the boy whose father comes soon. So whose father? The boy's father. So we know that it's way back here. And we know that puerum has to be accusative singular, but if you look down here, the boy is the victim of being helped, so that's what makes it the direct object or the accusative. And if we want to take a look, and how would we rewrite that so that we know that it's genitive if you weren't sure, or you weren't sure that that's the antecedent, so instead of cujus, we are going to say of the boy. So pater, that's in the nominative. So this can't be the genitive because we have the nominative. So the father of the boy. Or you could say the boy's father. That works too. Comes soon. We actually turn it into a complete sentence when we sub one for the other, and that will give you clearly. So because it's possessive, then we automatically know, if you didn't know, if you're translating from English to Latin, that it would be, this would be the cujus, the whose would need to be in the genitive, and the puerum is in the accusative. All right, so let's take a look at the last one. I'm not going to give you a translation. Let's work it out together. So very clearly, plus also, let's do the whole, I need to give you the whole phrase. Cujus pater mox venet. We got to go all the way to venet because we have to remember we have to have a verb and a subject in the relative clause. And if we take that out, someone will help the boy. And that someone will help the boy leaves a complete sentence, which is what we have to do. There has to be an independent clause, a complete sentence, along with a relative clause, which is not a complete sentence. They have to pair together. All right, next one. Puer cui librum dedi te vocat. All right, so cui is the relative pronoun here. What is the whole phrase? If you take a look, we're going to go all the way to the verb because it has to have a subject and it has to have a verb. Okay, so puer is nominative, singular. Actually, I'm going to do this in blue because it'll be easier. Cui. Cui can only be dative, so this is helpful. It's dative singular. Librum is accusative singular. All right, and this is dodari dedi datum, perfect first singular. All right, te, remember, is accusative singular, and vocat is present singular third. All right, so the boy, let's take out this phrase. The boy, what's the complete phrase? Te vocat is calling you. Okay, so let's put it back in there with the complete sentence. So we still have the boy. The boy has to be the antecedent because it's the only thing before cui. So if you didn't know, we could translate the two separate relative clauses, the relative clause and the independent clause, and see. So cui to whom dedi I gave, what was given? The book. Now if you do those separately, you can go, oh, the boy, I gave the book to the boy. That's how we know the boy is, that's how we know that the boy is the antecedent. So let's put them all together. The boy, and here comes our relative clause to describe more about the boy. And I'm going to put parentheses around it. To whom I gave the book. It's not a complete sentence, but it has a subject and a verb. A subject I, gave is the verb, is calling you. But we describe which boy? The one to whom I gave the book.